So good morning, everybody. I hope that you can hear me. My name is Stephen Mark Williams. I'm the Executive Director of ETP. And we are here today just to talk about the current call in the ETP Energy Industry Doctorate Programme. We did have a webinar approximately 6 to 8 weeks ago, which introduced it, but this is really to answer any final questions that you might have before the deadline, which is a week on Friday. So the first thing, if I could ask you to do, could you just go into the chat and could you just type in your name and your affiliation, in other words, which organization, institute you connected to, just that we have a record and just so that I know that you know how the chat works. So I see that on the call we have some friends, Michael Nerlin, hello, and Graham, hello. So thank you very much for doing that, excellent. So what we're going to do today is, so I'm going to go through some basic things which I kind of went through the last time, but I'm going to keep an eye on my screen. So please feel free to ask questions as we go along. Okay, but you can also ask questions at the end, but I'm very happy to ask questions as we go through. Hopefully we shouldn't be here for longer than half an hour. And if you can ask questions by simply going to your, so where's mine? I don't think I have one, do I? No, because I'm actually a host, I don't have one, but you should be able to put your hand up. So it's in the reactions, I think, along the bottom. You should have a thing that says, that puts your hand up. So if everybody could actually put their hand up now, again, so that I know that you know how it works. Great, Graham, you put yours. Ahmed, great. Jin, you put yours up. Lee, you put yours. Excellent, thank you. Safak, you've put yours up. Excellent, and now I think, and Laurie, thank you, put yours up. Michael, you put yours, thanks. Okay, and also I think that you actually have to click it again to put it down, as far as I'm aware. I think that all the other reactions automatically go down after a certain amount of time, but that one you actually have to put down, I believe. Anyway, excellent. So without further ado, let's go on. So just to remind you, 12 noon Friday, so that's a week Friday. Okay, so the application you download from the ETP website, here it is. So this is different to last year. It has to be submitted through your ETP board member. I'm hoping that you all know who your ETP board member is. If you don't know, again, please put your hand up and I will tell you, okay? So there is one ETP board member for each institution, and it must be accompanied by, so that this application form, you can see a letter of support from that ETP board member. That's as much as anything so that we know that your host institution knows that you're applying, because sometimes we get applications and the host institution has never heard of the application. I think it's important. So you need statements as well. This is also new, that the 2 supervisors meet your own regulations for PhD supervision. This is because last year we had a couple of supervisors who we thought actually didn't probably meet that, and they were probably too junior to be a supervisor. You need a letter of support from your co-supervisor, so in a different university, and you also need a letter of support from your industrial sponsor. And then if you have, not so important, but if you do have a student identified, remember you don't have to have a student identified by this point. You can attach the CV. So those are all the things that you need. So the timeline right now, so as I said, the deadline is the 12th of June. The panel meets on the 16th of June. So that's the week after, on the, must be the Wednesday. And then 2 weeks after that, the board meets to ratify. And at that point, so the panel review is just is a suggestion, if you like, to the board. And then the board actually ratifies the panel's decision on the 28th of June. And once that happens, then in the middle of July, you will find out whether you have been successful or not, and the FS will be mid-July. And then you then have 6 months essentially to get the project up and running. So you haven't found a student, you'll have to find a student by then. So it is the end of December, so the 31st of December 2021. And what we mean by that is that we need the invoice for the project. So when you make your application, you will let us know how much you are seeking for from ETP. So we need invoice and then evidence of student registration. The student doesn't have to have started by the end of December, but they need to have registered by the end of December. Okay, so the funding. So what we call this the third model. So ETP grants are up to 30K. This is on the assumption that an average PhD is 90K. Obviously, we know it fluctuates a lot. It can be anything between about 60 and 150, 160, especially if the student is an international student. And the balance of the cost has to be split between the university and the industrial partner. So for example, for a 75K PhD, university 25K, industry sponsor 25K, ETP 25K. Now this year, we're going to be a little bit more flexible about the industrial component because we want to attract more SMEs. So if the case can be made that the SME cannot essentially afford that third, then the panel will look at less than 1/3. Then the university would have to obviously then fund the balance. So if it was 75K, it could be, for example, university 30K, industry sponsor 20K. Remember as well that the industrial sponsorship, part of it can be in kind, because there will be some of the costs probably of the PhD which can be met in kind. But certainly not all, but certainly some of it can. And the grants are paid at the start of the project, as I mentioned before, on presentation of the invoice. So if you have been awarded, for example, 25K, then your invoice will be from the university to ETP for 25K, and ETP will then pay the invoice. And the invoice has to be submitted by 31st of December, as I mentioned before, because then we have to claim it back from the government. Right, so supervision. So there are essentially the 3 supervisors on ETP project. So you've got your principal supervisor from the host institution, and then there must be co-supervision from an academic from an ETP partner university. In certain circumstances, we will accept if the case can be made for an academic not in an ETP partner university, then that will be accepted too. But generally speaking, they have to be from ETP university, and that person has to provide a letter of support to accompany the application. The industrial sponsor must also provide a supervisor, point of contact, who must be involved in the project. And as I mentioned before, the PhD supervisors need to have a statement from the university saying that they meet the university's own requirements for PhD supervision. So we need 2 of those, 1 from each supervisor. As I said, if you want to ask any questions, please do so as we go along. So the students themselves, there can be any nationality, okay, international as well, but obviously the international costs are more, but ETP will still only pay up to 30K. And then it was really between yourselves how you split the balance. So they should have a first or 2-1, although a relevant master's degree is also acceptable. If they have kind of a master's in renewable energy, that's also acceptable, for example, and should be registered by the host university, as I mentioned, by the 31st of December, 2021. Now, the industrial sponsor requires an industrial sponsor, okay, to collaborate in the PhD. They can be any size and any location. So this is different to the Knowledge Exchange Network, where it's only Scottish SMEs. So we do have many industrial partners who are international, and we have, in fact, most of our industrial partners are large companies and not SMEs. But they must provide around 1/3 of the cost of the project, and also a specific co-supervisor, and then a letter of support. And this is important. We do read the letters of support, and we take into account the kind of support that the industrial sponsor is providing, primarily to the students, because they're there primarily for the students' benefit, but also to the project and the academic. So, what kind of engagement is the industrial sponsor going to participate in with the academic and the student? What are the benefits to both the company in terms of knowledge exchange and the student and the academic? And then obviously the value of the support, exactly how much are they actually putting into the project? As far as the assessment is concerned, the assessment has 4 components to it. So 4 criterion. So the first one is it supports the themes of the Scottish Government's energy strategy. Note the slight subtlety in the change of wording there. Doesn't support the actual energy strategy because that's kind of changed since it was published 3 or 4 years ago. But if you go to the ETP website, you will find a PowerPoint, if you don't know about this already. At the last presentation that we gave, webinar, the Scottish Government were very specific about the kinds of things they were looking for in terms of the theme and the actual content of the project. It doesn't mean to say that's the only things that they will support, but certainly those are the priority areas. So I will let you to go and have a look at that if you haven't looked at that already. The demand driven by industry, academic quality is 10 marks, and it promotes ETP's mission and objective 5 marks. So each project is marked out of 30, and normally we have 5 or 6 assessors. So for example, if we have 5 assessors, that means the total mark is out of 150. And essentially all we do is we just rank them. And normally what happens is that the top 2 or 3 are quite obvious, maybe even 4, which are kind of the first and the 2 ones, if you like. Then there'll be a kind of a gray area in the middle, and then there will be those which are an obvious fail. So what happens is that at the panel, we tend to discuss more about those that are in the middle, just to see whether we should fund them or not. And there might be extenuating circumstances as to why we don't fund something, even though the marks might be quite high, especially if the Scottish Government say, look, in their view, it's not something that is a priority of theirs. Okay, thank you for putting that up. I see that, excellent, that's probably Jenny. Well done, Jenny. So each criterion is marked independently. So you have to answer each criterion independently. Don't assume that an assessor is going to read parts 1, 2, and 3 in order to get the answer to part 4. So when we say part 4, everything about ETP's mission and objectives, you put it in there, even though you might have said it before. Don't assume that somebody has to guess as to what you may or may not be doing because of what's happened, but what you've written about. Very similar to EU funding. Okay, EU funding works on this because sometimes different assessors have marked different components. This isn't the case here, but so I suggest that you make sure that you answer each one of these criterion fully. And of course, the assessment panel will include at least 1 representative from the Scottish Government. So one of those 5 or 6 will be a Scottish Government representative. So the actual application itself, so you have a project abstract, which is not assessed, but we do use for promotional activity. And so the abstract is what we put on the website. So you need to make sure that we can do that with it. Okay, essentially it's your 100-word elevator pitch. It's interesting because these tend not to be very good. These are not scientific studies of your project. If you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about your project, you need to make them interested. This is what this 100-word elevator pitch is about. We use it in promotional material, and it's about the challenge, how you answer the challenge, and the actions you take. Okay. Then the product description, not assess, but it helps us to find out a bit more about the product and also to base our actual assessment on the other 4 components. So it's a high-level description. So it helps us understand the proposal, and you'll have bits and pieces. You might even have work packages and stuff like that. I mean, I put that elsewhere, but what you want is the context of the project. Really, that's what it's about. I need to be able to understand what it's about when I read the product description. And secondly, so supports the themes of the Scottish Government Energy Strategy. So these are the 6 themes, but the specific areas of interest, which I've written here, will be communicated in due course, are actually in the PowerPoint that Jenny has just sent the link to on the chat. Okay, so that's what you need to go and read. And you need to be specific about linking your project into that. Don't assume that we're going to link it. Be specific. Say, on page da-na-na of the this is what it says, and this is how we link into it. Okay, and of course there will be, if you're looking at hydrogen, for example, there's a hydrogen assessment, hydrogen plan, and there's a wind position statement. So all these kinds of things that you can link into as well. Okay, there might not necessarily be specific ones for your own. I know there's a transport strategy, for example, although the Scottish Government aren't looking to fund projects in transport this time around, I don't think. So specific areas of interest, so you need to demonstrate that. Demand driven by industry. So this is 10 marks. So this isn't just about how it connects with the industrial sponsor. The industrial sponsor's letter is very important. Okay, so that will be taken into account when we give the 10 marks. But you need to demonstrate how it's industrial beyond the actual sponsor itself. How will it impact the bit of the industry which you are in on a wider sense? And this is the bit often where applications fall down. So you need to look at, who else is involved in the industry, how will it affect policy, for example, in Scottish government policy, and maybe even third party, maybe internationally. So you need to demonstrate that. And say this is often where it falls down for me when I mark them. Has to be significant knowledge exchange potential. Remember, this isn't just about consultancy. This is about also building the academic research base capability within the sector. And as I mentioned, potential for impact, industry jobs, the wider sector. Academic quality, 10 marks. I think this tends to be one which is the best answer, because I suppose this is the one that academics are most comfortable with. So overall aim of project, actual academic quality itself, it has to be clarity and achievability of objectives, quality of academic environment, the potential for academic impact. So all these things, the benefits to the student, learning experience, skills. All of these go into this bit here, and this is given 10 marks. And finally, the other one that tends to not be written very well is the alignment with ETP strategic framework. In other words, mission statement, values, goals, objectives. What proposals often write about is how it will benefit the co-supervisor institution and the PI's institution. But what about all the other ETP institutions? How will it benefit the other 11? Okay, so the project is probably tied into a thematic group. So for example, if you're putting something in heat, there's a heat theme group, so it's tied into that. Okay, so you want to say how that will benefit, how the theme group are going to be involved. But what about all the other theme groups? Remember that there are now 13 themes. So how is that going to link into the other 13 theme groups so that everybody in the ETP community can benefit from the program? And that's where the weakness comes usually in this mission objectives. Okay. And also don't forget the other communities, the other PhD students. How is this particular student going to engage with the other students so that they benefit from each other's learning? Remember, the name of the game for ETP is collaboration. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say. So feel free to put your hand up if you've got any other questions, anything else at all. Any questions about your program, how it fits, what the content is, or you can talk to me offline later if there's anything else you need to know. I don't see any hands up, so hopefully that you are all aware of everything you need to do. Is that correct? Oh, Graham, I've got your hand raised. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick question. So it's indicated that if you have identified a student, you should provide a CV and indicate their mark or expected mark. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with expecting a student to commit to a project that may or may not get funded, because then they might, be putting off other offers or other terms of employment, and that's a bit kind of unfair to them if it then doesn't get funded and they don't get a position. Yes. So I would far rather take the approach of waiting to find out if funded and then recruit a student. Is there any disadvantage to doing that?
That's a very good question, and when I talk about this, I think about this myself. I think to be honest, this is a bit of a legacy for when I took over. I know I've been here for a while now, and actually I agree with you. I would simply not put anything in about students. I don't quite know why we ask for that. Although I do distribute the PhD, the CVs when I put the application packs out to the panel. Generally speaking, we don't look at, and in fact, as you say that, projects have changed students. They say this is the student, and then so I agree. I simply actually wouldn't put anything about student. It wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. It wouldn't. What's the opposite of benefit? But anyway,
disadvantage.
Whatever the opposite benefit is, that it wouldn't at all. No.
Okay, that's fine. Because I think it also benefits if once you know you've got the funding, then you can do a more kind of formal recruitment process.
Yes, exactly.
And obviously we've got no shortage of good students coming through, so that's fine. Thank you.
No, that's absolutely right. Yes. So I had people raise their hand. So I've got Abwede, is that right? You have your hand raised? Do I have your name, Abwede? Are you there? Because you're not on mute right now. You are on mute, so I can't hear you. No, it seems to have disappeared. Okay. Michael Merlin. Hello, Michael. You have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Well, I already have, as you may remember, an ETP doctorate working here, and so far it's been a great experience. I absolutely love that.
Good.
What I may be doing this year is to work together with Professor Lee Xiu for another one, but at Strathclyde. Just would like to confirm, because as you pointed out, those are new requirements for the letters from the universities. So I've already contacted the grad school to get this statement that should be able to that I'm able to co-supervise a student. Is there any kind of particular wording or something that you're looking for, or just mainly like a tick, making sure that
it's just a tick? That the statement would be something like the university or the faculty approves this person for supervising this PhD as they meet the internal requirements of the faculty for the level of supervision, or something like that. That's all it needs to be.
Okay, that's fine. I'll send a statement along that line to the
exactly.
I'm sure that they will come back to me.
Yes, because sometimes what happens at the panel is that we look at the supervisors and we go, we're not quite sure whether the level of supervision is adequate. And I guess it's just to take that uncertainty out, rather than us having to contact the, because sometimes in the past as well, you see, this might seem a bit of a strange request, but we have had applications in from individual supervisors, and even the faculty or the department don't know. So I think we're just trying to make sure that doesn't happen, that everybody is absolutely aware, and that it's approved by everybody before we receive it.
That's fair enough. I do understand. Well, anyway, so yeah, no, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Thank you very much for precising that. And I remember one of the past requirements is to obviously to keep regular communications with ETP throughout the project. Oh, did I? Okay, looks like my video failed for some reason. So to keep essentially in close touch with ETP throughout the project by sending reports and all that. Is that a similar requirement now as well?
Yes, it is. I just kind of took that out of this presentation because I just wanted to concern myself, this presentation, about the submission of the application. But yes, some of the conditions, the requirements are that there's a requirement on IP, which you will know because you were involved in that last time. There's a requirement that, that ETP is absolutely kept updated, so that we're sent the reports whenever the reporting is for the PhD. It could be after 9 months, after a year, or whenever that is, a certain point in the year. And also that I'm invited to the kickoff meeting, so that I can make sure that everybody's involved and that students getting the best supervision from the industrial sponsor as well.
Perfectly fine. Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So I don't appear to have anybody else's hands up. So let me go to the chat. So application should come from the lead supervisor, not the student. Yes, exactly. Yes. Is there a link to detail on IP? Okay, so Graham, if you actually go to, so this presentation in its wider form is actually available on the ETP website. So if you go and download that presentation, there is actually a specific slide with that requirement. As I said, I actually took it out of this slide because that wasn't part of what I wanted to talk about. But yes, so if you actually go to the ETP website, you can download the full presentation, which contains a slide about IP. So essentially what it's saying is that any IP in the contract, which we then send to, assuming that you're successful, for example, to Strathclyde, in the contract that we send to Strathclyde, there will be a statement in there saying that Strathclyde will agree to allow the Scottish government unlimited access basically to the IP, as a basic only access to it, not ownership of, but access to IP. Okay. Thank you. I think Jenny's put it on. Well done, Jenny. Thank you very much. So let's see. Somebody else has put a question up here. Does identifying student with exceptional CV give an extra? No, it doesn't. So that's why Graham's point about just simply not. I don't quite know why it's there, to be honest. I think originally back in the day, 12 years ago when we first started this, it was probably important, but it's not right. How many studentships are available during this round? Well, actually, it's down to the amount of money. So there is 180,000 available. So assuming that everybody asks for 30,000, everybody's given 30,000, then that's 6. However, we have had times in the past where actually we've only been asked for, say, 15 or 10K, because in fact, it's just a balance to extra funding that they need. And consequently, we've been able actually to fund 7. But generally speaking, it will be 6 if everybody asks up to 30K. Right, there's nothing else in the chat. Nobody else has put their hand up. So if that's the case, in that case, we will close this down. Last opportunity to ask questions. If not, okay. In that case, thank you very much. I will expect a whole heap of applications then from you all at 11:59 a week on Friday. And again, please ask, email me, message me if you have any questions at all. Okay, we want good applications. Okay, although it's competitive, we need good. I've got to hang on 2 more. Excellent. Okay, in that case, goodbye everybody, and have a lovely day. I hope it's nice where you are. Cheers. Bye.